Now there are obviously certain types of yarn that one wouldn't use in the warp. Anything like this is a mohair yarn. In fact, it's a mohair and silk blend. A very fine, very beautiful yarn, but you can see there's an awful lot of filament in there. And even as it's coming off the ball, as I've just pulled that little bit of it off the ball, you can see that those threads are wanting to bind onto each other. If you use anything like this, which is even remotely hairy or has a filament in it in your warp, you're going to run into trouble because you won't be able to open the shed. The other thing that I want to draw your attention to is that a singles yarn is not a good yarn to use for your warp. So this is a singles yarn, and if I just hold the ball a little bit closer, you can see that the twists on this yarn all obviously go in the same direction, but if I take the yarn and I try and just unwind it, oops, I'm going the wrong way, you can see that there aren't one or two distinct threads. There are just a whole lot of fibers that have all been twisted together. Now that's what we call a singles yarn. And a singles yarn in general is not strong enough for your warp. And you could see as I did that tug test the right way, just like that, it just drifts apart. This yarn I would definitely not use for my warp. You can use it for your weft, it makes a beautiful weft, but to use it for your warp is not going to work. If you're not sure what a plied yarn looks like, this green thread is a plied yarn. Can you see I have two very distinctive threads that are twisted around each other there. And if I just undo that, untwist it, you can just get your finger in there and you can pull those two distinct threads apart from each other. That is a plied yarn. So there you are. Just two very important things that you need to look at when you're choosing a yarn for your warp. First of all, make sure that it is relatively smooth. Excuse me. You can, for example, use a boucle or a looped yarn in your warp. That actually works quite nicely. But anything that has a loose filament like this mohair, I would avoid. Or any of the novelty yarns, I call them eyelash yarns, where they have little threads hanging out of them. They're terribly pretty and they work beautifully in the weft, but not great for the warp. And if you're going to do the tug test, do it the right way. And remember that your warp is made up of more than one warp thread. So even if you're using a very fine cotton and it actually breaks quite easily, if you can put a whole lot of them together and still break it, then I would avoid that too. I hope this helps. I think we've all made the same mistake of choosing a yarn that is inappropriate for our warp and ended up with a really kind of disastrous project on our loom. And if I can help you avoid that, then I'm absolutely delighted to have been able to do it. Please remember that if you find these little videos beneficial, I do have a page on the Patreon platform. And if you would care to go along to Patreon and have a look and see what's on offer there on my page, and perhaps considering a small subscription to that, it would go a tremendously long way to helping me continue to do what I'm doing here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.